Trust funds are often viewed as a way for the ultra-rich to pass on their wealth to future generations, but the truth is that they are also a great tool for billionaires to use to beat the system and keep more of their money in their own pockets, and when you start looking into it, there are a few ways that they do this. The first way billionaires use trust funds to beat the system is by putting their money into one and then using that money to pay themselves a salary. For example, take the Walton family, the family behind Walmart. As of 2023, the family has a net worth of roughly $220 billion, but if you look into it, you'll find that only around $5 billion of that is in liquid assets. The rest of their wealth is tied up in Walmart stock, real estate and other illiquid assets. If something were to happen where they needed to liquidate some of their assets to get cash, they'd likely be forced to sell off billions of dollars worth of Walmart stock, which would tank the stock price and cause them to lose billions of dollars in the process. So instead, the Waltons have created a trust fund and have been putting their money into it for years. They basically pay themselves a salary from the trust fund and then invest that money back into Walmart. This allows them to avoid selling any of their Walmart stock, and it also means that they don't have to pay capital gains tax on any of their investments. Instead, they only have to pay income tax, which is much lower. In fact, this strategy has worked so well that the Walton family hasn't paid any federal income tax since 2009. Another billionaire who uses a similar strategy is Elon Musk. You may know him as the CEO of Tesla or the owner of Twitter, but he's also the founder of the Space Exploration Trust. This trust was set up to hold the shares of SpaceX that he's given to his children, and according to documents filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, it has about 42 million shares of SpaceX stock. That stake is currently worth approximately $76 billion. So how does this trust fund help Musk beat the system? Well, for starters, it allows him to avoid paying gift tax on the shares he's given to his kids. Gift tax is a tax on the transfer of property for less than fair market value. So if Elon were to just give his kids 42 million shares of SpaceX stock directly, he'd have to pay gift tax on the full value of those shares, but because he put them in a trust fund instead, he only had to pay gift tax on the amount of money he contributed to the trust. That amount is currently $1.5 billion. That's a huge savings for Musk, especially considering that gift tax rates can be as high as 40%, but it also means that his kids aren't paying capital gains tax on the sale of their shares either. When Elon sold his stake in Twitter, he had to pay capital gains tax on the profit he made from the sale, but his kids won't have to pay any capital gains tax on their SpaceX shares because they are getting them for free. So not only is this trust fund a great way for Musk to avoid taxes, but it's also a great way for him to pass on his wealth to future generations. Of course, trust funds aren't just used for tax purposes. They can also be used to protect your assets from lawsuits, and they can also be used to make sure that your money is invested in a certain way. Take Warren Buffett, for example. He's currently worth $109 billion, but he's put a big chunk of that money into a trust fund. That trust fund is currently worth $46 billion, and when Warren dies, half of that money will go to charity, the other half will go to his wife and kids. But what happens to that money while Warren is still alive? Well, he gets to decide how it's invested, and he's chosen to invest it in a very low-risk way. The trust fund buys corporate bonds and then invests that money in a diversified portfolio of stocks and real estate. This means that Warren's heirs won't have to worry about the trust fund losing money, even if the stock market crashes. It also means that Warren doesn't have to worry about his money being invested in things that he doesn't agree with, like fossil fuels or gambling. He can invest the money in a way that aligns with his values and make sure that his money is used to make the world a better place. At least that's what he says he's doing anyway. Of course, trust funds aren't just used by the super wealthy. Anyone can set up a trust fund, and there are a lot of different ways you can use them, but most people don't have billions of dollars to play with, so we should probably be more realistic about what we expect from these trust funds. A study conducted by Boston College found that only 12% of millionaires built their wealth through inheritance. The other 82% built their wealth on their own, and that's good news because it shows that anyone can become wealthy if they work hard enough. Of course, becoming a millionaire isn't the same thing as beating the system, and if you want to do that, you'll need to have a lot more money to start with. That said, there are still a few ways that trust funds can help you beat the system even if you're not a billionaire. For example, trust funds can help you avoid probate court. Probate is the legal process of distributing a deceased person's assets, and it can be expensive and time-consuming. In some states, probate can cost as much as 80% of the value of the estate. A trust fund can avoid all that hassle and expense. If you put your assets in a trust fund, they'll be distributed according to your wishes without having to go through probate court. Another way that trust funds can help you beat the system is by protecting your assets from creditors. If you have a lot of debt, creditors could force you to liquidate your assets in order to pay them back. But if those assets are held in a trust fund, creditors usually can't touch them. This can be a great way to protect your home and other personal property from creditors. Finally, trust funds can also help you avoid estate tax. Estate tax is a tax on the transfer of property after someone dies, and it can be a big problem for wealthy families. In fact, estate tax is one of the reasons why so many billionaires use trust funds, but you don't have to be a billionaire to take advantage of this tax break. If you have a large estate, you can use a trust fund to avoid estate tax. By setting up a trust fund and then funding it with assets, you can avoid paying estate tax on those assets, and all of these are great ways that trust funds can help you beat the system. But at the end of the day, it's important to remember that trust funds aren't the only way to achieve financial security. There are a lot of other things you can do to protect yourself and your family financially. So if you're thinking about setting up a trust fund, make sure you weigh the pros and cons carefully and talk to a financial advisor to see if it is really right for you. Trust funds are often seen as a way for the ultra-rich to pass down their wealth to future generations, but the truth is that they are also a great tool for billionaires to use to beat the system and keep more of their money in their own pockets. While it is unlikely that you'll be able to use trust funds to avoid taxes and other financial obligations, there are still a few ways that trust funds can help you beat the system. If you have a lot of debt, creditors could force you to liquidate your assets in order to pay them back. But if those assets are held in a trust fund, creditors usually can't touch them. This can be a great way to protect your home and other personal property from creditors. Finally, trust funds can also help you avoid estate tax. Estate tax is a tax on the transfer of property after someone dies, and it can be a big problem for wealthy families. In fact, estate tax is one of the reasons why so many billionaires use trust funds. If you enjoyed this video, then check out my other videos where I explore the tactics the ultra-rich use to grow their wealth. Thank you for watching and best of luck in your investing journey.